Welcome to the Korea Pro podcast. I'm your host, Jeongmin Kim, the editorial director of Korea Pro.
And I'm John Lee, the editor of Korea Pro.
Join us for a weekly 15-minute conversation as we dive into the most pressing stories shaping South Korea and dissect the most complicated ones for you.
From politics to culture, technology to society, we've got you covered. So stay ahead of the curve and never be sidelined again.
So get ready for a fresh perspective on South Korea's news. This is the Korea Pro podcast.
All right, listeners, welcome back to another episode of the Korea Pro podcast. It is now Thursday, April 3rd. It's a little past 11 a.m. And today we're going to do things a little bit differently. We are going to record this and upload this today. We usually upload on the very next day on Friday, but...
It doesn't make much sense to do that this week because the impeachment ruling will be Friday, 11 a.m. Korea time. I will be covering that from on the ground. I will be at the Press Corps Center of the Constitutional Court. I hope I make it back. But more importantly, after the podcast is published today, there will be a separate webinar that we are hosting less than half a day after the ruling. So it will be very difficult to prepare that. But still, please join the discussion. It will be 9 p.m. on Friday, Korea time, and it will be 8 a.m. EDT, I believe. And we will be joined by legal and electoral experts to process whatever happens at 11 a.m. in South Korea tomorrow. And reminder, we have month in review published for March. So if you missed any important econ, political, foreign affairs, or, social defense sort of stories that you want to check out, go to koreapro.org. And to kick off today's discussion, let's not go to impeachment right away, but let's discuss something else. Tariff. It's April 3rd. It kicked off in U.S. time, right?
It did. It kicked off on April 2nd U.S. time, and Donald Trump is a man of his word. Who would have thought that anyone would be saying that? But here we are. Now, there are two types of tariffs that are kicking in. The first one is called the baseline effect, the baseline tariff, and that's going to be 10%, and that will come into effect on Saturday, Korea time.
Does that apply to everybody?
I believe so. But the reciprocal tariffs, that's a little different from country to country. South Korea's reciprocal tariff rates will be 25%, and that will start kicking in next week. Just for those who are keeping track, Japan's reciprocal tariffs is 24%.
Why is that?
The U.S. Council of Economic Advisors has had a very interesting way of calculating how they were going to impose reciprocal tariffs. They decided to take each country's trade surplus or deficits from the U.S. perspective, and then divided by the amount of exports, and using that trade deficits as their baseline. That's how South Korea got 25%, Japan got 24%.
I see. So South Korea gets more benefit right now. So the tariff rate is higher.
South Korea has more of a, when you calculate it by trade exports as well, along with the trade surplus that South Korea enjoyed last year, which was around $66 billion, I think.
I see.
So South Korea has a higher tariff than Japan. But if you want to look at Cambodia, I believe they got a 34% tariff rate. And
That's
so
bad.
It really makes not a whole lot of sense. In fact, there's this one Australian territorial island which is inhabited only by penguins that has also been tariffed by the U.S. government.
Poor penguins.
Those penguins apparently did a whole number on Gotham City and on billionaire vigilantes dressed like bats. And so, those tariffs are really hitting everyone.
Including penguins.
Including penguins. And as soon as the news broke, the Kospi took a nosedive, and markets are reacting very sharply to this. Now, it's not just South Korea, it's all across the board. Now, Donald Trump made this announcement in the U.S. time in the afternoon, so this was already after trading had already stopped in the U.S., but I'm sure that by the time the U.S. stock market wakes up tomorrow morning, they're going to see a whole lot more red than they have already been seeing for a while. This has already been going on in Asian markets as well, of course. I just mentioned the Kospi. Same thing happening in Japan. The Chinese have been hit by a 34% tariff rate, and so they're not feeling very happy about this either. Right now, there's no good news coming out of this from anywhere except from the White House. That's just really celebrating this Liberation Day, as they're calling it.
Well, we will keep an eye on it while the political turmoil sort of goes on next week. We do have to cover this as well, although it's less related to impeachment, so keep an eye on it. Joon Ha, let's go to you. Aside from impeachment and constitutional court related stuff, there was an by-election, right?
Yeah, so there was a by-election yesterday, and we saw the results come in yesterday evening, Wednesday evening to be exact, and it did come out as quite a landslide victory for the Liberals.
But not DP only.
Not DP only.
Right.
So the RKP, the Rebuilding Korea Party, Choguk's former party. And they So the PPP suffered quite a major loss in all of its constituencies. And these were just mayoral elections. So 5 mayoral positions were contested. Asan, Koje, Guro in Seoul, Kimcheon in Gyeongbuk, and Tamyang in Jeollanam-do.
What happened in Gyeongbuk and Tamyang? Because Gyeongbuk is very traditionally conservative and Tamyang very progressive.
Yeah, so the thing that we can see is that the PPP still went ahead and secured Kimcheon, the Gyeongbuk region that they already had in 2022 when there was another election at the time. The Choguk's party, the RKP, they claimed...
Despite Choguk being in prison?
Yeah, they claimed Tamyang, even though Lee Jae-myung went down to Tamyang to campaign
DP lost
for the
there.
DP. Yes, the DP lost by quite a margin. But for the other regions, the DP did win and take the constituencies away from the PPP.
So this is interesting. I just published a poll update yesterday. Thanks for editing that, John. We're seeing something very interesting. The conservatives are actually losing ground in traditionally conservative areas. Yeah, in Seoul as well, like Yongsan, like these are very conservative areas, but they saw like a very big erosion of support in Seoul. And also after the wildfire, they maybe this is just very temporary, but they lost support in Gyeongbuk, Gyeongsang area in general. And that is sort of being reflected into the results,
definitely.
it seems.
I think it's there's quite a growing dissatisfaction with both major parties, as we can see, especially with the results in Tamyang. The Rebuilding Korea Party did not really have an election standing, to be honest, after the April election, including the by-elections last October as well. And when you see how the results spanned out here, you can see that there is quite a large voter dissatisfaction.
So that's probably a wake-up call for the DP, actually, because although it's just one small region, it actually says something about the traditional progressive support for the leader of the DP. Like if you look at the polls, there are actually big gap between progressive support for progressive administration and personally support for Lee Jae-myung.
Now, of course, to play devil's advocate, this might be a canary in the coal mine sort of situation, but when it comes to national elections, Choguk's not in the play. He's in jail. And so Lee Jae-myung personally doesn't have to worry about the presidential race.
Right, because the liberals will, vote for a liberal party candidate, whoever that might be. Are there any updates to Lee Jae-myung's trials?
So Lee Jae-myung's trial, as we saw just last week, what we all did not expect him to come out freely, but his other trials are still going on. So he still has 5 other trials going on at the moment, as if my memory serves, including the North Korea remittance case, and that's still going on. So he's still got quite a number of legal decisions to get through.
And if you want to read like a quick Cliff's Notes sort of style of an explainer of that, I wrote that for last week, I believe. So check it out. I made it into a chart. It's a very, very long chart of allegations. And speaking of which, let's move on to impeachment and constitutional court.
It's finally here.
Yeah, it's finally here. When did the court announce on the ruling date?
April 1st.
April 1st.
Yeah.
April Fool's Day, and they announced it. Joon Ha, can you give us like 30-second, really quick reminder of what the main point of contentions are?
Yeah, so there's 5, and it's the declaration of martial law, the military's blockade of the National Assembly, and the intrusion into the legislature, the military's occupation of the NEC, the National Election Commission, and all of its servers, the proclamation of an unconstitutional and unlawful martial law decree, and orders of the arrest and detention of judges. Those are the ones that are being contended.
And on koreapro.org, if you want to take a look in more detail, we did like a story where we pointed to specific parts in Yoon's final defense where the justices might agree or not. So those are the main points of contention. When it comes to the delay, this is historically long deliberation period for an impeachment case, right?
I remember saying that impeachment would be delivered by the end of February, and here we are at the beginning of April.
And this is just really unprecedented because it took, 38 days?
38 days. From
the final hearing to the ruling. And it does look like, coming out after a by-election might be, it could have been calculated a little bit so that they don't politically impact the election results too much. But also they have decided to make a ruling before April 18th. And why is this important again?
two justices are going to have their terms end on April 18th. If they decided to delay this even longer, it would have just thrown a wrench into everything.
Right, because that technically means that it opens a can of worms of like potential scenarios that we didn't discuss
Indeed.
so far,
Yeah.
like waiting for the two justices to be appointed by Han Duck-soo. He's very principled about appointing justices, and the DP would have tried to impeach Han again, right?
And everyone else.
Yeah, and everyone else like they are doing right now.
At this point, the impeachment threats that the DP have made against Han and Choi Sang-mok, they are right now temporarily on pause, I think. They're all going to wait for tomorrow's ruling. Now, if for any reason Yoon is reinstated, then we don't know what's going to happen. That's going to just be disastrous in so many different ways for so many different reasons. But right now, the DP is playing a wait-and-see game. Do they impeach Han? And do they impeach Choi at all? Or do they just wait for the impeachment and wait to see if Yoon is impeached? If Yoon does get impeached, then they might just keep it in the back burner because in 60 days, by June 3rd, there will be a new government. But we'll have to see how things play out.
Right. And DP is actually risking a lot when it comes to the string of impeachments because this is actually their moment to sort of be like the grown up in the room and, come up with
Take
more,
the moral high ground.
calm sort of perspectives when it comes to what's best for the governance and the
I'm
risk.
sorry, have you ever met a politician before?
Yes, so I'm talking about something too ideal that's never going to happen. But speaking of which, there has been some speculations about why the delay happened so far. It includes it seems like among experts, legal experts, the consensus-ish is that there might have been a tie so far. So they wanted to figure out a way to resolve it one way or another. So a lot of speculations go to the possibility of maybe the justices were sort of split into 5 versus 3, which would be reinstatement, but with just one justice, which is a problem because if Ma Eun-hyuk is appointed, it might be 6 versus 3. So it will depend on the PM Han's decision whether or not to appoint him. So many experts speculate. This is conjecture that there might have been something like a tie, like 4 versus 3 or 5 versus 3 or 4 versus 4. But now somebody changed their mind. Either way, and we will see that tomorrow.
Looking to stay informed about South Korea's fast evolving political, business and cultural landscape? Join us on Korea Pro, the go-to resource for in-depth analysis expertly curated by top-tier professionals. And now you can pick the membership level that best suits your needs, thanks to our new subscription packages. Starting at just $199 annually, you can access daily analysis and our weekly podcast. Or try our premium membership package, which offers additional perks such as executive briefings, monthly reports and forecasts, networking receptions and event opportunities, as well as much, much more. To find the best fit for you, just head to signup.koreapro.org and become a member today.
Week ahead, the ruling, and
The immediate aftermath.
right, when I said week ahead, I started imagining all sorts of scenarios in my mind that might happen next week. Can you walk us through some of the potential social unrest scenarios?
Well, I'm writing that analysis today as to what kind of protests or social movements that we can expect to see depending on the ruling. If best case scenario, if it's an 8-0 vote to impeach Yoon, yes, there would be some protests among the conservatives, but it would show that there is unanimity among the justices about the checks and balances, and the conservatives will lose a lot of their, shall we say, mojo when it comes to all of these different kinds of protests. So they will
Although
still
they
protest.
will say that the justices are communists.
Sure, they'll say that. But on the grand scheme of things, it will still be much more limited than otherwise. Now, if it's a split ruling, but still leads to impeachment, well, okay. They will still protest, of course, but they might have a bit more energy behind them because then they can say, yeah, but we are still at least partially vindicated.
But also they might aim at specific justices.
Right.
Which they've already done.
They're already done, yeah.
But if it's the kind of split that's 5-3 or 4-4, the numbers that you just mentioned, which leads to Yoon being reinstated, boy. As you've pointed out in different analyses, looking at the polls, South Korea the South Korean public, the majority, has consistently supported impeachment and consistently supported replacing the current government with the opposition party.
Yeah, significant plurality.
A significant plurality. And so if he gets reinstated, it's not just the opposition that's going to get up in arms about it. It's going to be a significant plurality of the Korean people.
Right. And also the very concerning sign that I saw in last week's poll from NBS, Gallup, and Real Meter, all of them, is that they asked the question whether the public would accept the result that they see from the Constitutional Court if it is not in line with what they wanted. 53% said that they will accept it, although they disagree with it. 40% that they will not accept it. That means that 40% is the potential scale of people who might be mobilized to the streets, regardless of the ruling.
Now, we do have to take that with a pinch of salt. What people say and what people do are not always the
Yeah,
same.
of course, yeah.
People say they won't accept it, but does that mean that they're going to start smashing windows? Or are they just going to stay home and say, I don't accept this?
Yeah, just say that on YouTube replies.
Exactly. And so these are very different sorts of scenarios that we're actually looking at. But regardless of what happens, all of this will be taken into account, and we are going to store this all in the week ahead newsletter, which will come into your email inbox by Monday at 2 p.m. So if you'd like to know more, please subscribe. And I hope that you're all listening to this today, because this will go out today.
And also, tomorrow, please join our discussion, events.koreapro.org.
Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in.
If you want to know more, sign up for our daily executive briefings. We brief you on all you need to know from the past 24 hours and why they matter every morning in your inboxes.
Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for your weekly dose of insight. And until next time, I'm Jeongmin Kim.
And I'm John Lei. Stay connected, stay informed, and we'll see you next time on the Korea Pro Podcast.